All right, Rabbi, good morning, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors. What a schos, Baruch Hashem. Last daf of Maseches Nazir. Well, for us, it's the last daf and a half. But, right, for the rest of the daf, you only cycle. All right, last daf of Maseches Nazir. So I will say we are beginning today thanking our TALMUD TORAH sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating all the Shirm and Drushos this month in memory of Paul's parents, Shmuel ben Zechariah and Sarah bas Avrohom. We also thank Avraham and Shaindy Kelman for dedicating all the Shirm and Drushos this month in memory of Avraham's mother, Sarah Bryna bas Yehoshua Heschel. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families a nechama. I will say with that, let us begin. Because we have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Samech Vav 66, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Samech Hem at base 65b at the Mishnah. At the Mishnah, no, not the second Mishnah, but the first Mishnah. 2, 4, 6, 8. It's embarrassing. 9 lines down from the top, but okay, good. In Meretz Hashem, we'll say some really great sugis here. I just want to make sure that I hit everything here that I'm supposed to hit. Okay, excellent. We'll say, let's go. A lot to do. Says the Mishnah, Kol Safek Nigoim. So we'll say, what if happens if you have a Safek Tzaras? You have a Safek in Tzaras is something called a Negat Tzaras, or not. We'll qualify that in just a little bit what the Safek is. So B'tchila Tar. So we'll say, B'tchila means, remember, we saw this earlier in our Sugya, in Tzaras you effectively have potential three stages. What are the potential three stages? Number one, quarantine. Quarantine, where the Maisa, again, you just don't know what your status is. Next, Yemei Chiluto, you're a definitive Mitzorah. And number 3, Yemei Heskero, Yemei Chiluto, same thing. Or ultimately, Yemei Sfiro, the days of the counting of your purity, which is a 7-day process. Shabbos, the Mishnah says like this: if you have a suffix of something in Saras, everything depends on when the suffix arises. If it's Betchila means before you are a confirmed Mitzorah, Tahar, then ultimately any suffix will be dealt with leniently. Achla niskat l'tuma. Right? So b'tchila tar achla niskat l'tuma. So before you've been definitively declared as a mitzorah, any suffix in saras is dealt with leniently. Okay, misha niskat l'tuma. But once you've been declared as a mitzorah, and then if a suffix arises, ultimately again svego tameh. We deal with the suffix in a more stringent fashion as tameh. Beautiful. Gemara. Menachem. We'll say, where do we know this from? So again, we'll say pretty straightforward halacha. Suffix tzaras, if the suffix arises before you're definitively declared as a mitzorah, svegotar. Once you're definitively declared as a mitzorah, svegotameh. So where do I know this from? It says, Amarkra, litaro o litamo. Very interesting, I will say. Because the pasuk by mitzorah, the pasuk by mitzorah says, litaro u litamo. Right? The Kohen will go ahead and declare. Well, the truth is here is actually talking about the actual mitzorah, the tzaras itself, to be declared pure or to be declared tameh. The fact, since the Torah said tahar before tameh, what do we extrapolate from that? That any suffix tuma is dealt with in a lenient fashion and declared tahar. Well, if that's the case, I will say, if that's the case, then what? Then any suffix tzaras should always be declared tar, even if what? Or independent of what? Independent of when the suffix arose. So whether the suffix arose before he was declared a mitzorah or after he was declared a mitzorah, if it's about the lashon of the pasuk of litaro o litamo, then halacha lamaisa, you should be able to go out and declare any suffix tar. To which the Gemara says, "Elaki itmar Rabbi Yehuda amar Rav aha." So also listen to this, aha itmar. When Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav that the source of this concept is litaro litamo, he was speaking about this specific case. Here we go. So I'll say, aha itmar. In Baheres, kadma laseir lavan. So also listen to this. Baheres is a white spot, right? A bright white spot. So I'll say, if you have a Baheres, white spot on your skin, kadma laseir lavan. So I'll say, the way this works is like this. Imagine for a moment a person has a bright white spot on their skin, let's say on their arm, but the arm, the hair on my arm is still black. It's still dark. So if the Baheres comes before the hair on my arm turns white, tameh. Ultimately, again, then I'm tameh. In other words, we'll both say, so the normal progression of saras is skin lesion, skin issue, right, Baheres, and then the hair turns white. That's tameh. The imser lavan kodim lebaheres, but if the hair on my arm turned white before the Baharas developed, then what? Tar. Okay, we'll say now, Safek. What happens if I'm not sure? You could see a case like this where a person just wasn't paying attention, just not sure about whether or not which way everything happened. So Safek, Tameh. Ultimately, any Safek going to be Tameh. Rabbi Shmuel says, Kia. Rabbi Shmuel says, Kia literally means a faint color, a faint white. So my Kia, what does that mean, Kia? Amr Yehuda, Kia Vitar. Rabbi Yehuda says what it means is Kia Vitar. What Rabbi Yehoshua is coming to say is that Allah Chamaisa, in a case of Safek, we will render the guy Tahar. I Vidilma Kia Vitame. I maybe it means that it's faint, but he's Tameh. Amr Yehuda Marav, Amr Kra Letaro Letamo. Oh, I will say this is the case. Cases where ultimately a pasuk says Letaro Letamo, pasuk puts Tara before Tumah to teach me what? Holu pasuk Bo'akasa B'Tara Tchila. Since the Torah opened up with the word Tara, ultimately it tells us that any case of Safek is ruled Tar. So Rabbi say it turns out that the case that we're referring to over here of a Safek Tsaras ruled Tar, what will be a case of Safek Tsaras ruled Tar? That's this case, Rabbi say. Again, remember, if a person develops a Baharas, a white spot, and then the hair inside the spot turns white, you're Tameh. If the hair was white first, and then the Baharas developed, Tar. If it's a Safek, then what? Tahar. Why did I say this is the example of the Mishnah? Because this is a case of where the Safek developed before a person was declared a Mitzorah. So any Safek which occurs before a person definitively declared as a Mitzorah, that Safek will be resolved leniently, i.e. Tar. Any Safek which arises after a person has been declared a Mitzorah, ultimately again will be decided stringently, Tameh. Beautiful. Mishnah. So I'll say, listen to this. There are 7 ways in which we check a Zav. Now, what exactly are we checking a Zav for? So we'll say, so take a look. Okay, so I apologize. So we're going to have to jump pages just a little bit because the rush over here is on Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph 66a, and the rush is actually at least in my version over here on the left hand side. Oh, so by the way, just coming attractions tomorrow. Masechet Sota, Habalei Latova. Exciting announcement. We are back to Rashi. Right? Life. The rush is fantastic. We love the rush. It's funny because I was going through all of Nadarim until Nazir, until Marshi pointed out to me that I've never had the same pagination as anyone else with the rush. So I was spending all of this Masechtas, telling you where to look, and sending a little bit of a wild goose chase. I apologize for that. So I'll say, so this rush is on Samech Vav Amud Aleph, at least in mine, left hand margin. So if you look over here, the rush says as follows: about halfway into the rush. B'shiva drachim both kines hazav shemra'a machmas ones tar didarshina mipsara avolo machmas onsa. Okay, so both says just a moment. Zav cannot go home sector without getting into Zav, right? So now Zav is back, right? We are closing this out with the Zav. No, we're not. Actually, we have one more Mishnah after this. So we'll say, now listen to this. Zav, okay? Zav, not a seminal emission, right? Some type of other emission which renders the guy tamei. What's the halacha of a Zav? So we'll say, first emission, he's treated just like a regular Baal Keri. A guy with regular seminal emission. What's the status of a Baal Keri? Baal Keri, 1 day Tumah, go to the mikvah, Harav Shemesh, you're good to go. If a Zav has a second emission, what's the halacha? Shiv Nikiyim, 7 clean days. Third emission, Karban. Okay, now both say. Now, what we're going to see is there's an interesting halacha, ultimately again, when it comes to a Zav, which is specifically the second emission cannot be attributed to any external result. If for some reason the second emission is attributed to any external result, then it doesn't count as Zav. It could count as Baal Keri maybe, but it won't count as Zav. So when the Mishnah says over here, B'shiva drachim both kines hazav, which means we check for 7 possibility external stimuli when it comes to the second re'iyah of Zav. So he says, Ad shelo niskak leziva, right? Ultimately, again, when it comes ultimately to the second re'iyah. So what do we check for? So again, if you just finish up in the rush is over here. Ad shelo niskak letuma, the tuma, He calls it l'tomah sev l'ziva. Da'ainu kishara re'iyah shniya sheba yigmor l'tamei mishkav u'moshav. Aval re'iyah rishona metami ba'ones tumas erev. So here the Rosh just says it. Right, the first re'iyah, again, it doesn't matter, even if it is a result of external stimuli, it doesn't really make a difference, because the first re'iyah is really the same thing as Baal Keri. It's the second re'iyah, I will say, which really concretizes his Toma identity over here, that has to be a pure Zav re'iyah through and through, i.e. not attributable to any external stimuli. So I'll say, for example, what do we look for? The Makalu Mishnah, maybe he ate something, maybe he drank something. B'masa, maybe he carried something heavy. B'kfitza, maybe he jumped. B'choli, sickness. B'mara, maybe he saw something. B'hirhor, maybe he had some type of thoughts. Mishanisk, so again. So these are the things we check for. So a man has this second Zav emission. We try to see, is it possible that maybe the emission is attributable to something external to him? And if it is, or I'll say, if it is, it just won't trigger the Shiv Nekiyim. However, again, once he's had two re'iyos, so again, remember, what kind of re'iyos are we talking about? Number one, could be any kind of zav re'iyah, even if it wasn't triggered by something else, it doesn't make a difference. Number two, we've established, again, it was not triggered by any external stimuli. Now, so now after you're up to re'iyah number two, in bodkin also. Ultimately, again, for re'iyah number three, Rabbosai, what the Mishnah is saying is what? We don't have to check him, or we don't have to check if it's attributable to any external stimuli. Why not? Because the L'maisa, again, we'll see. So re'iyah number three is problematic, or triggers the need for a carbon, even if it is a result of something external to him. In both kinosa, onso usveiko v'shichvas zaro. So we'll say onso means if there was an extenuating circumstance. Sveiko, a suffix case. Shichvas zaro, seminal emission. Tameim are all tameim. Sheraglayim ladavar, because we both say raglayim ladavar means, because we've used this phrase already in the last couple of mishnayos. Raglayim ladavar sounds like over here that halacha l'may, so we assume that there's some zivos mixed in there. Hamakes chavera, both say totally unrelated halacha. Hamakes chavera v'amdu alamisa. Listen to this. Ruvain hits Shimon, and Ruvain delivers such a significant blow to Shimon that Shimon is about to die. Now what happens? V'haka mimenu, Baruch Hashem, Shimon has a refuah shalema. Sh'rayit v'haka mima shahaya la'achar, then Shimon, Baruch Hashem, begins to recover from the injury he sustained at the hands of Ruvain. La'achar mikayim hichbedu meis. But then what happens? Then a few days, right, some amount of time goes by, Shimon goes out and gets sick again, or succumbs to his injuries again. Hichbedu meis. So we'll say, so now what's the shaila? Is Ruvain chayiv for killing Shimon or not? Now we'll say, what's the shaila in here? The shaila in here is there was seemingly a period of recovery after the injury was inflicted from Ruvain onto Shimon, or by Ruvain onto Shimon. So what's the halacha? Chayiv. Tanakama says Ruvain is chayiv, since Ruvain is the one ultimately who inflicted the injury. Rabbi Nechemia Amar Pater Shagalayim L'Davar. Rabbi Nechemia says you're Pater. Why? Raglayim L'Davar. We'll say what does it mean Raglayim L'Davar? Since there was a period of recovery in this, you can't say that it was just the injury of Ruvain that caused Shimon to die. There must have been some other contributing factor to the demise of Shimon, and therefore Ruvain is not going to be chayiv. Incredible. We'll say back to Zav. Right? So not immediately. So I'll say, where is this from? Right? Where is what from? So we'll say, so listen to this. So here's what we got from the Mishnah, we'll say. Essentially, remember, let's go through this again. Zav. Right? Zav. Everybody's favorite guy, the Zav. Right? Re'iyah number one. What's his status? 1 day Tumah, just like a Baal Keri. Right? Just like a man who experienced a seminal emission. Good. We'll say, does it matter why that emission came about? No. Makes absolutely no difference. In other words, external stimulants, it doesn't make a difference because it's just like a Baal Keri, just like by a Baal Keri. It doesn't matter what the emission is, right? So we'll say now, emission number 2. What happens to Zav emission number 2? One more time, Shiv Nekiyim. Emission number 2 is only problematic, however, if what? If it is not a result of external stimuli. Okay, fine. Now we come to emission number 3. What happens to emission number 3? Emission number 3? Carbon. Now we'll say, now here's a such thing. The Mishnah did say this. Emission number 3 is like emission number 1. Namely, that halacha l'maisa, even if emission number 3 came as a result of external stimuli, doesn't make a difference. doesn't make a difference. So we'll say that's the question the Gemara is asking. How do we know? So I'll say, how do you know that emission number 3, even if it's a result of external stimuli, is still problematic, it still triggers the need for a carbon? V'hazav es zovo. So as I said, the pasuk says v'hazav es zovo l're'iyah shlishis iskish l'nekeva. So I'll say this is very interesting. So the Gemara over here is quoting the pasuk v'adava b'nidasa v'hazav es zovo. So we'll say the pasuk over here is comparing a zav to a zava, right? The zav is a man, a zava is a woman. Now we'll say, now remember, a zava, even if her emissions are attributed to some external stimuli, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. Why? We're not going to get into that. It doesn't make a difference. I will say it's an incredible drasha. Zav es zovo, the Gemara's understanding refers to a man who has had 2 emissions. Zav, zovo. And it puts him in the same pasuk as hazava b'nidasa, which we're also referring over here to a zava. Right? Zava b'nidasa. Dava b'nidasa. So the Torah is equating a zav who has had 2 re'iyos already to a zava. And therefore what? As the Gemara says, just like a zava ultimately again becomes tameya with a third re'iyah or with any re'iyah, even if it's attributable to external stimuli, so too does a zav by his third re'iyah as well. Incredible. So we'll say that's the halacha. So we'll say 1 second. Rabbi Elazar says, no. The third re'iyah, Rabbi Elazar holds that it's a din in 4 re'iyos actually. And Rabbi Elazar says that re'iyos 1 and 2 and 3, both you check him for external stimuli, and it's only number 4 where ultimately you don't have to check him anymore. So we'll say, so what's going on over here? Ella be'esem k'miflegi. I will say they're arguing on the word es. Remember again, because the pasuk says va'adava b'nidasa va'zav es zovo. The Tanakama holds zav es zovo. Zav zovo means a man who has had 2 re'iyos. Rabbi Elazar says zav es zovo. Es is a ribui, and S comes to teach you about another re'iyah. So Rabbi Elazar understands the pasuk is talking about a zav of 3 re'iyos. So for re'iyah number 1, you don't have to check. But for re'iyos 2 and 3, you do have to check. For number 4, you don't have to check. Fine. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar darish esim, for Rabbanon lo darshi esim. So we'll say, so just so you should know that halacha l'maisa, we don't accept Rabbi Elazar, right? We accept the position ultimately of the Tanakama that this is a din in 3 re'iyos. But I will say, this is very exciting. Whoever knew that zav could be so exciting? Right? So at least for us. Right? So we'll say, so not for him. I will say, but l'maisa, what you have over here is as follows. You have re'iyah number 1, can be as a result of external stimuli. Re'iyah number 3, because it's compared to a woman, could be as a result of external stimuli. It's that middle re'iyah number 2, that ultimately again has to be free from external stimuli in order ultimately again to trigger the real tumah of zav. Incredible. Onso usveko. So remember again, the Mishnah said onso, an extenuating circumstance, or sveko, or just a safek case, ultimately are tamei. Top of Samach Vav, say top of Samach Vav. Here we go. Amar Rava, lo tema safek chaza, safek lo chaza. Can't be a case of where maybe it's a safek, did the zav see, didn't the zav see. That can't be the case. Elavadai chaza. In other words, we're trying to figure out what's the safek case. What's the case of safek zav? It can't be a safek if he saw, if a safek didn't see. Elavadai chaza, he definitely saw. Right? There was definitely an emission. So we'll say, what's the safek? It's very interesting. Safek machmas shechvas zera, safek machmas re'iyah. So I will say, what's the question over here? The question over here is, was it a result ultimately again of a seminal emission? Meaning, was it a seminal emission that potentially had droplets of zivus mixed into it, or ultimately again was it just a complete zav emission? To which the Gemara says, so kevan sheniskak l'tuma svegal tam. That's the Mishnah means. So we'll say if you have a suffix like this before he is a definitive zav, so we'll resolve it leniently. But if this suffix comes up once he is a definitive zav, then ultimately we will resolve it stringently. Incredible. Shichvas zar'o tamea. Soon again we'll say the shichvas zera, which is just the semen of a zav, is going to be done. I will say, by the way, it would seem to be the logic that the zera of a zav, the semen of a zav is tamei, is because l'maisa again we assume it's impossible that his zera doesn't have some zivus mixed into it. Okay, so lemai. So we'll say, so when you say that his zera is tamei, what does that mean? Lemai. Ilema lemago. If you want to say that if someone touches it, so lemai again they become tamei. So mi garam is shechva zera detar. We'll say that's no different than shechva zera and semen in general. Right? That if a person touches shechva zera, ultimately again they become tamei. Ella zaro shal zav mitame b'masa umatan. So b'masa. So I'll say rather what it's saying is that the shechva zera of a zav is more chamer than regular shechva zera. And that regular shechva zera is mitame b'maga through contact, but the shechva zera of a zav will be mitame even b'masa, even by carrying it, even if you don't have contact. So man shamas lahadam shechva zera shal zav mitame b'masa. We'll say, who is the author of this opinion? That the shechva zera of a zav ultimately again is mitame b'masa. Ilema hay tana. So we'll say maybe it's the following tana. The Sanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, shechvas zara shal zav eno mitame b'masa. This shechva zera of a zav is not mitame b'masa. It does not convey tuma through carrying. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer mitame b'masa. Rabbi Yehoshua says no, it is mitame b'masa. Right? It is absolutely is mitame b'masa. Lefi she'af sharla below tzich ziva. We'll say that's it. That's it. Why? Why is the shechva zera of a zera? We'll say so. Just to be clear. Under normal circumstances, regular shechva zera, right? Regular shechva zera is metame how? How does it convert? Regular semen is metame how? Maga, just through direct contact, not masa, not carrying. The chiddush of the shechva zera of a zav, the semen of a zav, is that it's metame even by masa, right? Even by carrying. I says the Gemara. Why is that? So here it is. I will say this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, because Rabbi Yehoshua says it's impossible that the shechva zera of the zav doesn't have some droplets of zivus mixed into it. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, it's tamei b'masa as well. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: Aval be'enei lo. But it would seem to be again. I will say that halacha l'maisa, if you were to have just regular zera, let's say for argument's sake, you were to have just regular zera from a zav, and you were to know that there were no droplets, ultimately, again, it wouldn't convey tumah. So the Gemara says, Ava be'enei lo amar, ela amar of adamar ava, lomar she'in tolen ba. So we'll say this is very interesting. Rather, the Gemara says like this, what it means to say is that we're not tola, we do not go ahead and attribute a zivos emission to a prior seminal emission. Now we'll say, now what is this? So we'll say, I want to show you. This is. Take a look at the Rush. The Rush is still on the same Amud. So Rabbi say this is actually quite interesting. If you look in my Rush, Rabbi say, it is 5 lines up from the bottom of the Rush. Listen to this interesting idea over here. So he says as follows: Amrav Adabar Ava Lomar Shein Tolen Ba Perish Imra Ziva Achar Keri. Rabbi say, listen to this case. Let's say the Zav had a seminal emission, right? And then ultimately again had a Zav emission afterwards. Now Rabbi say, now remember, let's go back for just a second. So remember again, Rabbi say, what's the halacha by Re'iyah number 2? Right? Emission number 2, what's the halacha? It can't be attributed to anything other than zivos. So listen to this case. Guy has a seminal emission and then has a zav emission. He's got a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on with this guy. So now watch this. So it says the Gemara, Ein Tolen, look at the Rush. Ein Tolen shemachmas hakeri ba'aziva. We do not say that the seminal emission was the result ultimately again of this. We do not say that the zav emission was the result of the seminal emission. This nan the keri mitara azivos me'is le'is mishum the machmas chulshad the kachazir. Also listen to this. We assume that when a man has a seminal emission, there's a certain level of physical weakness that he experiences. Okay, now watch this. Under normal circumstances, therefore, it's actually fascinating. So I'll say, therefore, as a result of that, if a man has a zav emission in the aftermath of a seminal emission, that zav emission could be attributed to what? To the physical weakness that he had as a result of his seminal emission. Right? So I'll say, therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, if this is talking about zav emission number 2, that could potentially prevent that emission from counting towards the actual tally. So we'll say, so that's the case over here. So again, so one more time. Generally, if a man has a seminal emission and then a zav emission, we could attribute that zav emission to the physical weakness engendered by a seminal emission, and therefore, again, remember, as we saw in the Mishnah, specifically with Zav Re'iyah number 2, it can't be attributed to anything else. If it's attributed to physical weakness, then Lamaisa, it doesn't trigger the Shiva Nikiyim that would normally come about as a result of Re'iyah number 2. Great. So now, we'll say back to the Gemara. So we'll say, Savra Papa Kamei Drava Lememar, Aidi Chulsha Hu Dechazi. Because we'll say it must be, again, as a result, ultimately, again, of the chulsha, of the weakness engendered by the seminal emission. That's why he had the zav emission. Similarly, Rava said, 1 second. V'hatina, Rava says, very interesting. What about the following case? Gershin is Gayer. We'll say a person converts, Metame biyad beziva. Ultimately, again, he becomes tummy immediately as a result of his zivos. Rava says, in other words, you convert, you automatically zav. So first of all, why is that? Why is that? So we'll say, so again, it's actually mitayim beziva, by the way, me'es le'es. We'll say now what that means is, he's not a zav gadol, in other words, it's not shiva nekiyim or karban, but he's a 24-hour zav. 24-hour zav. Now we'll say, now why is that? Because after listening to this, we'll say, the Gemara says, Amar le, ein lecha choli gadol mizeh. We'll say, this is such an incredible idea. Conversion causes weakness. Now, why does conversion cause this weakness? If you take a look at the last rush on the daf, he says, Perush, ti amrit tetam keri mitar beziva, mishum cholsha, mali yisra, mali ger. Adraba, tvei cholsha ika beger, shehechnes atzmo, ledaigas hamitzvus. Wow. So now watch this. If you're going to tell me that a man who has a seminal emission and then has a zav emission, that zav emission is going to be tar. Why? Because it's considered to be a result of the physical weakness engendered by a seminal emission. And therefore it's not a real zav. So we'll say, when a person converts, how can you make him a zav? After all, we'll say, is there any greater weakness than the weakness engendered by gerus? Because we'll say, what happens when a person converts? Why they weaken? I don't know, what does that mean? So the Rush says, daigas hamitzvos. When you convert to Rabbi, you realize that suddenly you are saddled with a whole new set of responsibilities. That whole new set of responsibilities should weigh on your shoulders. If it doesn't weigh on your shoulders, then you don't understand what it is that you're getting into. That's right. So that daigas hamitzvos creates a certain weakness. That weakness should say that any zivos that comes about as a result of it, what? Is zivos due to external stimuli, which therefore should not be a problem. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Kamiflagi, B'di Shmuel. We'll say, what are they arguing about? Or Elatanai here. Rather, we'll say it's a machlokes tanaim. The sign here we go. Shichvaz zera shal zam tayim masa kol me'is la'is. Any shichvaz zera of a, alright, is metame b'masa. I will say again, shichvaz zera of a zav is metame b'masa me'is la'is. And what does that mean? Any seminal emission that a zav has within 24 hours of his zav emission, again, any seminal emission he experiences within 24 hours of his zav emission is going to be tamei b'masa. Why? I will say why? Because we assume that there's droplets of zivos mixed in with his zera. Rabbi Yossi says yomo. Rabbi Yossi says no, it's only metame for that day. Not 24 hours, but that calendar day. So a man has a seminal emission, a zav emission, and then has a seminal emission. Seminal emission will only be problematic if it occurs on that exact day. So I'm not going to give us what are they arguing about. Here we go with the Shmuel. The Shmuel Ramiksiv, Shmuel contrasts the Psukim. Ksiv, Kieh Becha Ish Asher Lo Yetar Mikra Laila. Person says, if you have a person who is not tar as a result of a nocturnal emission. Uksiv, Lifnos Erev Yirchatz B'mayim. But then the pasuk says before the evening, hold immersed in the mikvah. So mandar me'is la'is. Ultimately, the one who says for a 24-hour period, dayik milifnos erev. He darshins the pasuk of lifnos erev. The dayik mikra laila, and the other ultimately are mikra laila. The other darshins the pasuk mikra laila. So mandar milifnos erev haksim mikra laila. But the one who darshins the pasuk of lifnos erev, what does he do with the pasuk of mikra laila? Amrlei orcha dekari lemesiba laila. He says no. That pasuk is not coming to give you a timeline. Rather, that pasuk is telling you, Rabosai, when is it common for a person to have a seminal emission? Ultimately, again at night. Rabosai. So it turns out, interestingly enough, that halacha l'maisa, there's a fundamental machlokes. Here's what we know. We know that in general, so we'll say we know a lot, by the way. We actually grew a lot from this sugya. I feel like, you feel it, no? Let's say, so l'maisa again, here's what I know. First of all, it's good just to get the halachas of zav down, right? Riyah number one is tummy no matter how it occurs. Riyah number 3, because it's compared to a woman, is ultimately also metami no matter how it occurs. It's Riyah number 2, for which we have to check the zav to make sure that it is not attributable to any external stimuli. Beautiful. That's halacha number 1 that we have locked in. We'll say halacha number 2. Shichvas zera itself is metame how? B'maga, only through contact. Shichvas zera of a zav is metame how? B'maga u'b'masa. Why? Because we're concerned sichtuche ziva, that there's some zav droplets mixed into that. I will say, how long after a zav emission does a seminal emission, I should say differently, up to how long after the zav emission does the seminal emission of a zav metame b'masa? Right? So we'll say, so that's the machlokes. The machlokes, one opinion says 24 hours, second opinion says just that day. Beautiful, I will say, final Mishnah of Meseches Nazir. And it's not about zav. Says the Mishnah, we'll say this is great. Nazir Haya Shmuel, Kediv Rabbi Norai. I will say, listen to this. We're ending with Nazirus. Right? So Rabbi Norai says that Shmuel Hanavi was a Nazir. Where do we know that Shmuel Hanavi was a Nazir? Rabbi say, listen to this. Shne'amar umora lo ya'ala al rosho. Because Rabbi say Chana in her tefillah. Right? Remember again, this is Tfilas Chana, the beginning of Shmuel Aleph. Vatidar neder vatomer Hashem tzvakos imra'ot tireh ba'ani amasecha t'chana davin. It says, Kadosh Baruch Hu, if you see my suffering, you see my difficulty, you don't forget me, and you give me a son, kol yimei chayav umora, I will give him to you all the days of his life. Umora lo ya'ala al rosho. So we'll say, Rabbi Norai, what's mora? It's a razor, a tar, right? He will never cut his hair, i.e., Shmuel was a Nazir. Ne'emar b'Shimshon umora, v'ne'emar b'Shmuel umora. It says by Shimshon, right? Shimshon Agibar, Shimshon was a Nazir. It says by Shimshon Mora, and it says by Shmuel Mora. Ma Mora Amura b'Shimshon Nazir, af Mora Amura b'Shmuel Nazir. Just like Shimshon was a Nazir, so too Shmuel was a Nazir. On Rabbi Yossi, no. V'halo ein Mora ela shel basar v'dam. So Rabbi Yossi says, no, that Mora is with an aleph, right? That Mora is with a hay. Rather, Mora ultimately again doesn't mean razor. Rather, what does Mora mean? Fear. Rabbi Yossi say again, often aleph and hay are interchangeable. So what is Chana saying? Hashem, if you give me a son, I will give him to you for his whole life. Umora lo ya'ala al rosho, he will never fear another person. The only entity he will fear in this world is you. He will have no fear of anyone else. So Amar Rabbi Yossi, V'alo ein mora ela shel basar v'dam. So Rabbi Norai said, 1 second, Amar Rabbi Norai, but it's not true. V'alo kvar ne'emar, Vayomer Shmuel, Eich elech v'shama shol, v'argeni. So I said, listen to this. Shekvar haya alav mora shel basar v'dam. So Rabbi Norai says, it's not true. Shmuel was afraid during his lifetime. Right? They will say, when was Shmuel afraid? This is after HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Shmuel that Shaul is no longer going to be king. After Shaul failed to kill out Amalek, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Shmuel to go and anoint one of the sons of Yishai as the next king over the Jewish people. Shmuel says, are you kidding me? I'm going to go. Shaul's going to hear about this, and he's going to kill me. So ultimately, again, you see that Shmuel did have periods of fear, right, when he was fearful of another person. So we'll say fundamental machlokes between Rabbi Norai and ultimately again Rabbi Yossi. Right? Rabbi Norai says Shmuel was a Nazir. Rabbi Yossi saying Shmuel was not a Nazir. Says the Gemara. This I want to point out, this is not discussed in the Gemara at all. That's because the Gemara. We'll say, I will just tell you, how do you reconcile this idea? According to Rabbi Yossi, who says that Mora means fear. So yet you see a pasuk that says that Shmuel was fearful of Shaul. So I will point out to you that the Ramban in Parshas Lech Lecha actually deals with this. The Ramban in Parshas Lech Lecha, which discusses Avraham Avinu gets to Eretz Canaan, and then he has to go out and he goes to Mitzrayim because of famine. There's a whole machlokes on Mefarshim whether or not Avraham Avinu did the right thing by going to Mitzrayim. Many Mefarshim say it was a lack of emunah. Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to take care of you. You shouldn't have gone. The Rabban says absolutely not. Even with complete emunah, you still need what? Still need ishtadlus. And going down to Mitzrayim where there was food was Avraham Avinu's form of ishtadlus. And he quotes this episode by Shmuel Hanavi. He says Shmuel had a complete reliance on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He knew that nothing, but at the same time, you have to put in ishtadlus. So ultimately, again, Shmuel's not afraid, but what he's saying is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The world works with Teva to put in my ishtadlus. You want me to go anoint one of the sons of Yishai? Again, in the world of Teva, in the natural order of things, the king is going to hear about that and he's going to get very angry. It was the ishtadlus. The same way Avraham Avinu put in his ishtadlus, and his ishtadlus in no way eroded his bitachon, his sense or his emunah. So too again, Shmuel's ishtadlus did not erode his emunah or bitachon as well. Okay, interesting. Rav L'chibra. Rav said to Chia, his son, we'll say on the base, Chatov uberich. We'll say this is absolutely incredible. Chatov uberich. So we'll say, what does this mean? Chatov uberich. Literally again, if you take a look, we'll say this is the last line in the Rush. This has got to be the same for all of us, right? Last line in the Rush. Chatov kol shal bracha, v'chei kol brachos al yikamecha achar. So let's listen to this. Rav was giving advice to Chia, his son. He was saying like this. When it comes to benching, we'll just use benching as an example. Grab the cup and leave the benching. Right? Or if you're going to make a very priyagafen and be motzi everyone, you be the guy who makes the bracha, and don't be the guy who's yotzei the bracha with everyone else. Chataf, literally grab it, and make the bracha. Rav Huna said to Rabbi's son, Chatov uberich. Be the one, or we'll say, in other words, better to be the mevarich than the shomeya. Better to be the one who's making the bracha, being motzi everyone else, and not the one who's listening and ultimately, again, being Yosei. The memra, is that to say, the mevarich adif, that the one who makes the bracha is more chashav, is more important than the one who answers amen and is Yosei with listening. Batani, we learn Rabbi Yossi Omer, gadol ha'one amen, Yosei min ha'mevarich. Yet I will say, ultimately, again, we learned that greater is the one who answers amen more than the one who makes the bracha. So it sounds like over here we'll say that. Now it sounds like it's saying that making the bracha, saying amen to the bracha is even greater, ultimately, again, than making it. To which the Gemara says, Hashamayim kachi. And Rabbi Narai says, yes, this is true. I'll tell you right, saying amen is even greater. Why? Teda was incredible. Shahare gul yarim miskar b'mokama. The Gibur Noskin. So it's very interesting. Rashi points this out over here that apparently the way they used to fight wars was like this. The first thing you do is you send in like your common like everyday infantry troops. You use them to wear down the enemy. After that, we'll say who seals the victory? Like special forces. Those are the guys that come in and seal the victory afterwards. So we'll say, so it's interesting. In the grand scheme of things, right? And so we'll say on the parade, who's on the float? Right? The special forces guys, right? Because why? They're the ones who finished the job. So too the Gemara says, the one who answers amen is the one who finishes the job. So you see from here, that what? That Lamaisa, the one who answers amen is even greater than the one who makes the bracha himself. To which the Gemara says, you know what, in reality, Tanaihi, it's machlokes Disanyo, Echad HaMevarech, Ve'echad HaOne Amen, B'mashma. I will say both the one who makes the bracha and the one who answers amen, B'mashma, I will say, are both ultimately again praiseworthy because they're both included in the pasuk. The pasuk that is mentioning over here is Gadu LaHashem iti u'neromema shemo yachtov. Literally again, right? Elevate the name of God with me. That's referring to the Mavarech, the one who's making the bracha. U'neromema shemo yachtov. We'll exalt his name together. Together is amen. Ella. But rather it is better to go ahead and be the one who makes the bracha than the one who goes ahead and answers amen. So I will say, so this is just a fascinating, just for a minute, a fascinating machlokes. So I will say, right? So this is a real life machlokes over here. Is it better to be the one who leads, or is it better to be the one who answers? I will say, so the answer is machlokes. So I will say, so being the one who leads, being the mavarech, I could hear that. Right? I could hear that because you're the one ultimately again who's making the bracha, and ultimately being motzi everyone else. So I hear the greatness of being the mevarich. I will say, what's the svara? What's the svara ultimately again to say that it's a greater schus to be the owner, to be the one who says amen, than the one who goes ahead and makes the bracha itself? So I will say, maybe the shot is like this. What happens when you say amen? Right? Someone makes the bracha and you say amen. They will say, what are you doing? What are you doing? You are affirming, right, and concretizing that bracha. I will say, when I answer amen to someone's bracha, what I'm doing is I'm doing something for myself, because amen is also, I'm making the same theological statement, and I am solidifying and concretizing that which you just did. I will say, sometimes in the world of ruchnius, it's not just about what you do for yourself, but it's about how you enable others to grow as well. And the person who goes ahead and answers amen, through that, what he's doing is he's elevating the act of the mevarich, right? So the mevarich by himself is making a bracha. When I answer amen specifically again, as I will say, if you look at it, especially in the context, ultimately again, of let's say benching, right? Or let's say kiddush, for example, right? So where you have an individual who's making the bracha and everyone else who's listening and answering amen and being yotzei. So if I'm the one making the bracha, incredible, right? What am I doing? Now when I'm making a bracha, what else am I doing? I'm being motzi other people. But the truth is, the only way for me as the mevarech, ultimately again, to be motzi everyone else is how? Through everyone else saying amen. So that amen, so think about it just a moment, right? Reuven's making kiddush, and I sing amen to that. When I say amen, what I'm doing is there's a twofold thing. Number one, I'm being yosei, but number two, I'm also transforming Reuven's act from one of an individual to one of a group aliyah, a group mitzvah. And so I have just given, through my amen, I've just given Reuven an additional schos. My amen has given something else. Reuven is beautiful. Reuven is making a bracha, and yes, he's being motzi everyone else. But Reuven by himself cannot be motzi everyone else unless everyone else answers amen. So the person who answers amen transforms Reuven's act from an individual act to a group act. And I will say, sometimes the greatest spiritual accomplishments in life are not the things you do for yourself, but the things you do for others. We're so focused when it comes in the world of ruchnius to our own growth, which of course is dramatically important. But just as important as our own personal growth is the growth ultimately again that we enable and that we engender in others. So we'll say, so that's the tension over here. So on one hand, you could say, it's better to be the mevarich. And I will say, what's the svara to say it's better to be the mevarich? What's the svara? Svara is, I will say, be an actor, not a spectator in life. Right? Don't be the guy who gets taken care of by everyone else. Right? Don't be the guy whose needs are cared for. Be the guy who takes care of everyone else. Right? Be the actor. Don't be the spectator. Right? Be active. Don't be passive. Be the mevarich. That's the svara. What's the svara to say it's better to be amen? Be the person who's not just focused on his own growth, but be the person ultimately who figures out ways to enable dynamic and dramatic growth in others as well. I will say one last word before we go ahead and we finish the Masechta. I will say, why are you finishing with this? Right? Besides that has nothing to do with the Mishnah. Why are you supposed to say? I saw something crazy. Bryna Tzaddik last night. Listen to this. So listen to this. This is Maseches Nazir, right? I will say this is Maseches Nazir. Right? What's Maseches Nazir about? Maseches Nazir about? Zov. Right? No. Right? What's Maseches Nazir about? I will say Maseches Nazir about Naziros. I will say, what's the one thing we still don't have clarity on the last half of this Masechta? Is it good or bad? Whole Masechta. Is it good or bad? Like, should be Nazir, should not be Nazir? And I will say, it's okay that we don't have clarity. Why? Because it's Machlokes. Rabbi Tzaddik says there is clarity. I will say, how does the Gemara end? Chatof ubarach. Don't be a Nazir. Don't be a Nazir. Kadosh Baruch Hu created beautiful things in this world. Chatof. Grab them and enjoy them. But ubarach. Make a bracha. I will say, what does he make a bracha? Make a bracha means elevate it. Whatever you're going to enjoy in this world, enjoy it in a meaningful and holy way. Tzaddik will say, is this not incredible? It's just, I know your mind is still on Zav. And I'll say, but again, right, this is incredible, no? Chatofu Baruch Hu at the end of the day, come on. At the end of the day, the Gemara says over here, this is it. Rabbi Tzadok says the Gemara resolves it this whole time wondering, Nazir good, Nazir not good, in a nuanced fashion. Chatof u'barich. Again, I'm not going to read to you the Rabbi Tzadok because it's a little bit longer. But Lamaisi says, this is the answer. This is the answer. Chazal are telling us, there's enough things that are asur in life. You don't have to create additional isurim. You don't have to create additional prohibitions. But Lamaisa, so chatov, take and enjoy. Kadosh Baruch Hu created a beautiful world for our enjoyment. Chatov, take it, ubarech. But you have to use it for something holy. Every single piece of gashmias that you are going to take and enjoy in this world, you must make sure that somehow, some way, it serves some higher calling, advances some spiritual agenda, that in some way, with any material thing you're going to enjoy, baruch, ultimately leads you to a life of bracha. Well, let's say, let's complete. Desanya, here we go. We'll say we'll read this tonight. Talmidei Chachamim, go ahead and cause the proliferation of peace in this world. Shene'emar v'chol banayich limudei Hashem v'rav shalom banayich. So I will say, ultimately, again, we end a number of Masechtas in this way. Why? To highlight this idea again, I'll leave this for the Messiah tonight. I just wanted to finish the last words. When Messiah telling us that the most beautiful byproduct of learning Torah, the most beautiful byproduct is shalom. Learning Torah, gives you a sense of inner tranquility, a sense of inner peace that you cannot get from anything else in life. Many things give us pleasure, right? Many things relax us, but if you're looking for that one thing that gives you shalom, that one thing that gives you true inner tranquility and true inner peace, so I'll say, can only be found on these pages. Mazel Tov, Rabbi saying, finishing Maseches Nazir. Again, so see you tonight, Hashem b'sha'at tova u'mitzlachos, and tomorrow we begin Maseches Nazir. Mazel Tov. All right, Chevron Zoom, Mazel Tov, everyone. Reb Larry, great to see you on Zoom. Welcome, Larry Franks. Make sure you give him a nice welcome. Dr. Langbaum, Kalman Akiva, beautiful, wonderful. All right, Reb Tzvi, Shalach from Eretz Yisrael. Have a good day. Mazel Tov.